we also have many other reasons to smile about socialism and the perspective of a future in which we all can live with dignity.
That's right.
That's why we're really honored tonight to have the presence of someone that I want to call my brother, someone that I want to call my comrade, someone who, at a very young age, made a decision to follow the revolutionary path. Someone who, right now, is being heavily demonized by certain sectors of the US media and propaganda systems. But we are very honored to have him here tonight. And it's our dear friend, comrade, Foreign Minister, Jorge Arreaza.
Hello. Hello. How many here speak Spanish? How many speak English? Most of them. No? I'm going to try to do it in English. First of all, I'm very happy I'm late because we were with President Maduro. He just met with the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, he's a good man. He's not able to do many things. He's like trapped because the bureaucracy of the United Nations has many limits, many restrictions. But the trip that President Maduro has made to New York has given us the opportunity to tell the truth about Venezuela. Okay, maybe someone can say it's not the truth. It's your version of the truth. Okay, it's our version of the truth. But our version of the truth, you cannot hear about it elsewhere. Have you seen CNN, Fox News, CBS, or in Europe, Euronews, Spanish television, Portuguese television, Dutch television, German television? We are demonized because we're socialists. These three men here, Madiba, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, and our father, Hugo Chavez, were socialists. On Monday, they made ¿cómo se dice homenaje? A tribute to Madiba in the United Nations. But the version of Madiba in the United Nations is the man of peace, the man of dialogue, the man who fought for equality against the apartheid and all this, which is not false. But Madiba was a socialist. Madiba was a rebel. Madiba fought even with weapons. And Madiba was one of his best friends, he is probably our grandfather, Fidel Castro. And we are sure that he did what he could after being released. And he couldn't go further. But we are sure that if he would have been younger, he would have built a path or opened a path towards socialism in Africa, not only in South Africa. And of course, Martin Luther King is also a reference for all. He had a dream, which is our dream. And Villa now, he said that socialism is necessary. Where is it? Oh, there you go. I would say that socialism is not necessary, it's indispensable. If we want to have a future tense, if we want our children to have children, and to have food, and to have water, and to have health, education, culture, then we need socialism. So, talking about socialism, I think I have to take my tie. That's only for the UN and diplomacy. And talking about Venezuela, which is the main issue here, you must know that Comandante Chavez, he had faith, he was a believer in two main subjects. In God, he believed in God, and in the people. No? He always said, the people, when they are awake, they are always right. When there's consciousness, they always take the right decisions. And even when we lost one election during his period of being president of Venezuela, by a very little, small margin. And he said, we were wrong. I said, no, Comandante, how can you say we were wrong? If the people didn't support us, our people that have consciousness, that have been under a revolution for, it was only 7 years then, but that was a lot then we did something wrong. So we have to rectify, we have to review what we have done. He believed in the people. And what happened in Venezuela, in order for you to understand, we have too much petroleum, too much oil. We have too much gas. We have too much gold, silver, diamonds, water, natural resources. It's a gift of nature, or of God, maybe, I don't know. It's in our territory, which is less than 1 million square kilometers, we have too many resources. And those resources were controlled by the elite that rules in Washington. I would never say by the United States of America, because if I say the United States of America, I'm talking about the people of the United States of America, whom we love and we respect. They always say that in Venezuela there is no democracy. They said that Comandante Chavez was a dictator, and they say now that Nicolás Maduro is an even worse dictator than Chavez. Chavez was a soldier. He was a very humble, he comes from a very humble family, poor family. He grew up poor, and he wanted to play baseball. And in order to play baseball, he decided that, because he had no money, probably if he was enrolled in the army, in the National Armed Forces, maybe he would have the chance to be in the Army's team. And so that's why he became a military. And once he was there, and he learned about history, and he saw how important concepts like sovereignty, like independence are, then he said, one moment, okay, I like baseball, but there is something wrong in this society, and I believe that using this knowledge that I am receiving here, I can help my people. And inequality is so obvious that I have to do something, and we have the weapons here. We have the power here. So if I convince a group of my fellows here that we have to change this country, we can do it. He was a dreamer. his dreams, most of them, or many of his dreams came to be real. They were true, finally. And Nicolás Maduro comes from the grassroots. He's a driver, a bus driver. He was in the unions. That's what I ask the American people. Can a unionist or a soldier become president of the United States? If you are not in the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, can you become president of the United States? Then is there democracy in Venezuela or is there democracy in the United States? It was President Lincoln who said, no, the government of the people, for the people, with the people, by the people. Well, that's what we're trying to build in Venezuela. We're trying to organize our people, or it's not the state or the party organizing people, it's the people organizing themselves. We facilitate the process because we have the control of the resources, and we give resources to the people, all kinds of resources, human resources, money, knowledge, in order for them to have consciousness and to organize themselves. And we always remember Lincoln in that sense, because that is a socialist concept. It is. The government of the people, for the people, by the people, that is socialism as well. And all that has happened in Venezuela since the revolution is in power is that now the people control the natural resources and the revenue that Venezuela has. And it has been invested in health, in education, in culture, in infrastructure, in the people. The first thing that Comandante Chavez did when after he had to struggle and there was a coup d'etat and there was a sabotage to our oil industry, and he finally had the control of PDVSA, which is our oil industry. What he did with the money, with the income, was invested in education and in health. He brought doctors. The Venezuelans had never seen doctors in the barrios, in the how do you say, the el campo, the countryside. Nowadays, in spite of all the difficulties, there's a doctor who lives a block away from your house, or maybe he's your neighbor, and you knock his door at any time of the day, and he's there to help you. And if you don't knock his door, he's going to come tomorrow and knock your door to see how you are. And they were, at first, we conveyed the Venezuelan doctors. We failed. Venezuelan doctors were educated in these universities, which are very similar to the universities here in the United States. And they were not interested in the poor. They wanted to be rich. I want to be a doctor because I want to be rich. But Fidel Castro told Comandante Chavez, no, Hugo, doctors in Cuba are not like that. So he sent thousands of doctors, and they lived in the houses of the people, in a room, and the people gave them food of their own. And then they began to organize a university in the barrios. These doctors became the professors, the lecturers, the teachers of the Venezuelans that are now doctors, that they are now graduating as doctors. And now we have 35,000 new doctors, Venezuelan doctors. The second thing he did was for a program for illiteracy, the people who didn't know how to read and write. And we have had these kind of programs in the past, and it took years, and in 1 year, with the Cuban help, more than 1 million and
500,000.
1 million and a half.
Yes.
Yes, 1 million and a half Venezuelans learned to read and to write. And the UNESCO had to go to Venezuela and say we were a free country of illiteracy. No? And then he said people need houses. And President Maduro delivered some months ago the house number 2 million, which for us is a lot. It's 10 million Venezuelans with new houses, a third of the population. And these houses were not for the bureaucrats, were not for the rich, were not for the middle class, were for the poor. For those who lived in the mountains and when it rained, they were in risk. For those, and the houses, I cannot say they are free, but they are almost free. You can pay your house in 30 years without any interest rate and what. So it's, and if you see the Venezuelans today living in those buildings, and it's not a little house with 1 room. It's 3 rooms, 2 bathrooms, apartments, houses. It depends. If you live in an indigenous area zone, then your house has to be built by the indigenous architecture. No? And it has changed Venezuela. All this is what Comandante Chavez called misiones socialistas, the socialist missions. And I was remembering when BJ began, when he said that Chavez spoke and he was a socialist, the first time that he said it was after the referendum in 2004. In December, he went to China and he said, we believe in socialism. But many of them said, nah, that's a politician. He's in China, they are socialists, so he says that he's a socialist. No? But then he went to Brazil, to the social forum there. And in the Gigantinho, which is a gigantic stadium, it was full, and he said, I have reached a conclusion. The only way to surpass, to overcome capitalism, the only way, there is no third way, the only way is socialism. That's what he said. And then the peoples and the press began to say he wants to build a Cuba, he wants to build the Soviet Union in Latin America. And he said, no, this is a different kind of socialism. This is a democratic socialism. This is another time. This is not the 20th century, this is the 21st century. And this socialism in the Venezuelan case is also, how do you say, alimentado? Fed by Bolivarianism. Bolivar, Simon Bolivar. That's why we're called the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. It's not the Bolivian. Bolivia is another country, and it's called Bolivia because of Simon Bolivar. But Bolivarianismo is what we really are. Because 200 years ago there was another empire, it was the Spanish Empire. And when you spoke about republics against monarchies, then you were a revolutionary. And Simon Bolivar made a revolution, and he created not 1 but 6 republics. And he wanted to go to the south, to Argentina, and he wanted to go to Cuba, he wanted to go to Puerto Rico, but he couldn't, because they killed him in some way. But he fought for the independence, and he said that the big nation that was becoming, how do you say, a potencia?
Power.
A superpower in the north of the Americas in 1829 was really, he said that we couldn't trust them. Well, 200 years ago this year, he had a debate, an epistolar debate by letters with the government of the United States then, because they said that they were going to help Venezuela or Colombia, because we were building a big project which was called Colombia, to be free, to win the war against Spain. But actually what they did was they were helping the Spaniards. They were helping the Spanish in order to defeat the Venezuelans. And they sent weapons and they sent ships and he had he made a protest, a diplomatic protest then. And he said, I don't trust these people. I mean, I admire their history, George Washington and all, but what are they doing? Why don't they help us? They are helping Spain, no? And then, in 1929, how could we translate this? The United States of America está destinada por la providencia. Seems destined by providence to plague
the Americas of hunger and poverty in the name of freedom,
of misery,
to poverty,
plague the Americas of misery in the name of freedom. 1929, and that's written, and it happened. It was like a prophet. It happened. That's true. There are no coup d'etats in the United States because there's no embassy of the United States. But what is to regret is that at this moment, the United States is planning coup d'etats, not in 1973 against Allende, not in 1954 against Jacobo Arbenz in Guatemala, not against João Goulart in Brazil in the 60s. It's today, in the 21st century. And you know why? Because this Bolivarianismo, they believe it's a threat to the national security because they believe in the Monroe Doctrine. 1823. James Monroe, President of the United States, the State of the Union, he went there and he said, this hemisphere is for the United States. No, we don't want here Spain or Germany or the United Kingdom, England or whomever. This is ours. Okay, then I must say that was important because it was like how do you say dissuasive or dissuasive? I don't know. No? It made those countries stay away from the Americans. But it was only for that then, no? Not 200 years after. And now President Trump, 2 days ago, he said in the United Nations that he believed in the Monroe Doctrine. And one of the sins that the Venezuelans are committing is that we have good relations with China, or with Russia, or with Turkey. That is not permitted, that is not allowed by Washington. So now they want to have control again. And there is this government from this guy Maduro, no? That we try to withdraw him, we try to kill him, we try to do coup d'etats, we try to do referendums, we try to do everything, and this man is still there. No? He's still there, he's here in New York. This period of the General Assembly of the UN was meant to be the time to say goodbye to socialism and to Maduro. This was to celebrate that Maduro was no longer president of Venezuela. This was to celebrate that he had resigned because of all the pressure. He quit his job. He was in Cuba protected by the communists, no? Or they had killed him, like they tried to kill him August the 4th with drones. So this was, but it didn't happen, and it didn't happen, and the worst thing is that Maduro came to New York and he gave a speech and he's the president. And there's a new president in Cuba, and he's not Fidel Castro, he's not Raúl Castro, he's Díaz-Canel, and he's socialist. And he believes in the Cuban Revolution. And there's this indigenous president in Bolivia, and yesterday he told President Trump that he was the dictator. And then there is this guerrillero, this guerrilla man in Nicaragua, who was overthrown somehow with a war in the 80s, and then they organized these elections in 1990, and they, with the fear, they played with the fear of the people of Nicaragua, and then he lost the elections. And 17 years after, he became president again, and he has the support of his people, and he's president in Nicaragua as well. And, okay, President Lula of Brazil, he's been in prison. You know why? Because if he was free, if he were to be free, he would win the elections in the first round of the elections. But the candidate he's supporting, who no one knew about him, really, because we were, or the Brazilian people were expecting Lula to be released because there's no reason for him to be in jail, only the political reasons. But this candidate, whose name is Haddad, is now tied in the first place in the surveys with the surveys of the election. So he will most probably become president in Brazil. And in Mexico, there's going to be a new government as well. That's why this persecution against Cristina in Argentina, against Rafael Correa in Ecuador, against Lula. But if they were to be in power in Venezuela, if they were to kill Maduro or to win even an election, no, we wouldn't be in jail. We would be killed. No? Because you know what the media say, Maduro is not only a socialist, he's a dictatorship, he's a drug dealer, he's a mafia capo, he's a monster. No? So there's no need for a judicial process, there's no need for that. We are, and all of us, and not only the ministers or the main people in the party, no, the social leaders, of the consejos comunales, of the comunas, they would be, how do you say, perseguidos? Persecuted. Exterminated. I'm not exaggerating here, I'm telling what it would happen. So that's why they want Maduro out of power. And they have done everything, and they will try to do much more. And we will resist. And we will surrender. Yesterday, when President Maduro, his plane took off like at 9 o'clock in the morning. Like at 10, we had no way to communicate with the president because he has no Wi-Fi. And suddenly we see the social networks and they say, Trump said that he would meet with Maduro if Maduro were to be in New York and whatever. What's this about? Yes, he was asked if he would meet Maduro, and he said, well, if that would help and he's here, well, I don't deny that possibility. Okay, very good. Then before the plane landed, then the Colombian media said at 4 o'clock, 4 p.m., President Maduro and President Trump are going to meet in the United Nations. I couldn't ask President Maduro, but I said, maybe, I don't know about this, and this is going to happen, no? So when President Maduro arrived and he landed and he was going down the stairs of the plane, I said, hey, President Trump is saying that he could meet with you. What? With me? When? Where? Why? It's all over the world. And he said, okay, if he wants to meet with me, if I have to meet with the devil in order to help my people, I will meet with him. He said last night, I believe President Maduro's address to the General Assembly last night or evening was a very good speech. I mean, we have to study because he had no teleprompter. He didn't read a paper. No? When you see President Trump doing like this, or President Maduro, no, President, what's his name?
Duque.
No, the one of Ecuador, Lenin Moreno. He's in a wheelchair, but he's doing like this also. It's because they have the speech, which has been written by someone, no? And they read it, and they are good. Sometimes you don't believe that they are reading. Or there are other presidents that read a paper, and they have worked, and they have studied. But President Maduro spoke from the heart. No, he came to say the truth. And all this trying to label humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. Why? Because this humanitarian label would allow, by a doctrine, which is not in the international law, but it's a doctrine, called the responsibility to protect. That would allow the United States Army, government, to invade Venezuela. Because if there is a humanitarian crisis. Today, the president of Chile, Sebastián Piñera, said, I cannot understand how there can be such a selfish man. What's the other adjective he used? An ambitious man, a bad man as Maduro, who is making his people be in pain without food, without water, without oxygen, without nothing. And he doesn't accept our humanitarian help. We have, only in Europe, we have more than $1,500 million blocked. In the banking system, all together, we will probably have more than $3,000 million blocked. Why don't they give us our money back so that we can buy or produce what we need in Venezuela? We send the ships with oil to some countries, and they arrive and they deliver the oil, and these people want to pay back. They have to pay, no? And the bank says, no, I'm not paying. I'm not working with Venezuela. So how can I pay? I don't know. That's your problem, not mine. Like in Brazil, they owe us more than $50 million because we give electricity to the north of Brazil, Venezuelan electricity to the north of Brazil. And the Brazilian government, which is not our friend at all, said, I'm sorry, I cannot pay. I have tried by all the means, with all the banks, European banks, American banks, Asian banks, and there is no way to pay Venezuela the money. And then there was this rumor in Roraima, the state which receives the electricity. Maduro, the dictator, is going to cut off the service. We're going to be like in the 18th century. We will not have electricity. And Maduro told the governor, she's a lady of Roraima, please come speak to me and I'll let you know. And he said, hey, I'm sorry because there have been some, how to say, apagones? Blackouts, because you know, in the towers of electricity, when the vegetation grows, and so we are working on that. We're going to cut all of that, and you must say we would never stop giving electricity to the people of Roraima, not even if they owed us $3,000 million. So you can be happy, it's not going to happen. But she said, but the media said that you were going to leave all the Roraima state with a blackout in the darkness. No, that's what the media said. Maduro is telling you, even if you want it for free, if you need it and you cannot pay it, we will give you the electricity. But that's an example. The people, my staff in the mission here, or in the consulate, or in the embassy in Washington, I owe them 5 months of salary, 6 months of salary. It's not because we don't have the money, it's because we cannot pay. I even thought on bringing the money in cash, but then I said, no, what happens if they find a Venezuelan minister with debía haberlo usado. I'm ashamed,
Yeah.
embarrassed because of that. But they have to understand. We will solve it. We talked about this with the Secretary General. They have a bank here, the Bank of the United Nations. Let's see. But another example. In this year, we had to begin the vaccination program in January. Everything was set. Everything was ready. We had to pay the PARHO, which we call the OPS, Pan American Health Organization. And we sent the money. It was, I remember, it was $8 million. Sent the money, and 5 days after they said, no, the transaction was not allowed. The money is back in Venezuela, and the vaccines in the United States. Let's send the money by this other bank. We sent the money. 5 days after, money was back in Venezuela. We spoke to the people of the PARHO, help us please. We should have began on January, and we finally began on April. After the people of the PARHO here went to the OFAC, the Treasury office here, and they almost kneeled, and they told them, I need an account to receive the Venezuelan money because they are late on their vaccination program. And finally, these OFAC people gave them one possibility, one bank, one account. They had to fill a lot of application forms to say that that money was not for the mafias of Maduro, that money was not for the drug dealing, that money was not for that, to kill little boys, whatever. And finally, we could pay for the vaccines. No. But now, you know that some Venezuelans have how do you say, fled, have gone away, se han ido. No? We have migration, which is new for us, because we have 5 million Colombians living in Venezuela. No? We have almost 1 million amongst Peruvians, Bolivians, Ecuadorians, and whatever. We have Portuguese, 400,000, Spaniards, 500,000, or whatever. Arabs, we have a lot of immigrants in Venezuela, and they live peacefully, and they have access to our education system, to our health system, to everything. So now, because of the blockade, no, because it has been difficult in the Venezuelan economy, the Venezuelans that have traveled to Peru or to Colombia or whatever, then they are used to get money from the United Nations, to get money from the government of the United States, of the European Union. So now you see President of Colombia saying, I need $50 million to address the humanitarian crisis in the border of Colombia, where we have 1 million Venezuelans living there. And then the President of Ecuador says we have 1 million Venezuelans. We receive 6,000 Venezuelans on a daily basis. 6,000. How many buses do you need for that? For 1 day? For 2 days? For 1 week? There's not an amount of buses in all Latin America. It would take 7 years for that to happen. 1 million Venezuelans. No, there is migration. Maybe 30,000 Venezuelans in Ecuador, maybe. Maybe in Colombia, and many of them are Colombians and Venezuelans at the same time. Maybe there's 100,000 Venezuelans, Colombians, both in Colombia, yes. Maybe in Chile there is, I don't know, 50,000 Venezuelans, okay. But 4 million? Yeah. And then in the north of Brazil, the ACNUR, how do you say ACNUR? The Refugee Office of the United Nations. With the government, the federal government of Brazil, they built these refugee camps. And if you're Venezuelan, and you say that Maduro is looking for you, that he's persecuting you, that you are his political victim, you sign a paper saying that, and they give you a job, they give you food, they give you medicine. And if you have a passport or what we use, a cedula, identity, ID card, no? If you don't have it, if you don't show it, you have it, but you don't show it, then your state is, how do you say, fallido? The Venezuelan state is a failed state. They cannot even give you identification. So come, you're a refugee, sign here, Maduro wants to kill you, and you have an opportunity in Brazil, of course. That's what happened in Florida with the Cubans. And you saw Cubans going on boats and whatever, because if you reach the coast of the United States, they will give you a job, they will give you an apartment, that you can be a player in the major leagues and whatever. No? That's what happened in Venezuela. But you know what happened as well? We have our embassies in Peru, in Ecuador, in Buenos Aires, in Santo Domingo. They are collapsing. Because now many Venezuelans were framed, no? ¿Cómo se dice? Tapados.
Scam, yes, scam.
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 Camp.
Scam. Scam.
Camp, whatever. And they went there, they told them that they would have a job in Peru, that they would have a new life. You know, the Peruvian dream, like the American dream, the Brazilian dream for the Venezuelans. And when they arrived there, they sold their car in Caracas or their house or whatever, and they went there. And when they arrived there, they saw that it was not true at all. And some of them are living like slaves. No? And only in Peru, we have 10,000 Venezuelans that went to the embassy and said, we are kidnapped here. No? We've been hijacked. We have no money to return to Venezuela, and we have no money enough money to eat here in Peru. Help us, please. So we have already sent, I don't know how many flights, I don't remember, and but it's not easy to bring, 5,000 or 10,000 Venezuelans by plane. So we are trying to arrange some other way, but it's not easy. And also in Brazil, more than 3,000 Venezuelans we have returned. We have paid for the buses because they couldn't eat. They were in the streets and they had no money to come back to Venezuela. And they are treated like slaves, and there's discrimination there, there's segregation there against the Venezuelans. We never segregated the Colombians in Venezuela. We give them houses, they go to our schools, and we love them, and we want them to stay in Venezuela. And now all these countries, I'm going to end with this, all this, the United States, Trump is a businessman. He has a big company. So he has his how do you say, the people of the directiva?
Board.
The board.
Board
So
of
then in the board, there is the president of Colombia, who is a businessman. The president of Chile, who is a businessman. The president of Brazil, who is a businessman. The president of Argentina, who is a businessman. The president of Mexico, he's gonna be out of power soon, but he is a businessman. And he gives them orders. No, he's the, how do you call the chief of the boss? CEO. The CEO. And he tells them what they have to do. We have to invade Venezuela, we have to isolate Maduro, you have to say that you receive 1 million Venezuelans, you receive 800,000, and then they have a strategy. And why are they doing that? Because they want they want the world public opinion to reach the conclusion that there is a humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, and they have the responsibility to protect Venezuela. And it would happen like it happened there are no Dominicans here from you know what happened in Dominican Republic in 1965. No? They began with this issue. There is a humanitarian crisis. There was a socialist president, Juan Bosch, no? And then they said there's a humanitarian crisis, and they gathered the ministers of foreign affairs of the OAS, no? The Organization of American States, and they said, we have to send medicines, we have to send food, we have to send doctors and nurses. And they sent maybe 20 doctors, maybe 30 nurses, some boxes of food, some boxes of medicine, and behind them, 10,000 Marines from the United States Army. And they overthrew President Bush, and there was a dictatorship in the Dominican Republic controlled by the US. That is what they want to do in Venezuela. But we are not the Dominican Republic of 1965. We are not Panama of 1989. We are Venezuela in 2018, and we know how to defend ourselves. We know that because an invasion will be a catastrophe not only for Venezuela but also for the region. If they want to see migrants, if they want to see in 1 week 5 million Colombians to return into Colombia, that's going to collapse the Colombian economy. No? If they want to see Venezuelans all over the region, if they invade Venezuela. But most of the Venezuelans will not fly away. They will stay in Venezuela, and we will resist. And maybe what happened in Vietnam would be only a little example of what we are capable of doing to defend our country. Do you think that if there were an invasion in Venezuela, you would find President Maduro in a hole in the ground like Saddam Hussein? Maybe he would. Maybe the Allende case. Allende, after all the investigations that have been done, they confirmed that he killed himself. But he killed himself because he knew that they were going to kill him. No, and he didn't want to give them the pleasure of killing him. But I know that President Maduro, maybe, or whomever of his team, maybe, most probably they will kill us, but we will kill 10 of them before they kill us. But those 10 would be young Americans from the United States, and we don't want to kill anyone, because we love the people of the United States. That would be crazy to invade a country in the 21st century. But if it were to happen, we would have to defend ourselves. Or it cannot happen. We have to stop it from happening. So if President Trump wants to meet with President Maduro in Singapore or in whatever, we don't have nuclear arsenal, but we have a revolution of consciousness, which is maybe worse than nuclear arsenal. They say, well, President Obama, who we respected until he signed this decree, this executive order saying that Venezuela represented a threat to the national security, an extraordinary and unusual threat. Venezuela. How can we harm the United States? I don't know. And but I believe we are a threat, not only Venezuela, the countries of the ALBA, the Bolivarian alternative, no? And because we believe that socialism is indispensable, and that there will be no future without socialism, that we are going to eat each other in a few generations. There will be no food, no water, no oxygen if capitalism is still ruling and the dictatorship of capitalism is still in place. We are sure that that is the case. So we have to build socialism today. And you know that it will not be possible to build socialism in the world if we don't build socialism in the United States. So that is... It's not easy. We can help. We can give you advice. But the revolutions cannot be copied or exported. That has no sense. So it's a great task that you have in the United States, where we are sure that you can make it. And it would be, well, the point of inflection for the building of socialism in humanity. But think about your children. Do you have children? Do you have children?
Yes.
Maybe they can be the last or generation. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not maximizing the issue. They could be the last generation. Or okay, not them. Then their children. But there is, as Vijay said, there's no future. Capitalism kills time. No, time has ended. The things are how they are. They will not be different in the future. If you are poor, you will be poor, and your children will be poor, and the children of your children will be poor. No? And we have to stop that. So we have to stop it now. And I must tell you that I am also sure that the Bolivarian Revolution, in spite of all the threats, of all the isolation, of all the aggressions, we will find our path to get out of that of all of that aggression. We will make it. We cannot make it alone. We need all of you. We need you to raise your voice. You know what happened today outside the United Nations? There was a demonstration of right-wing Venezuelans. There was this man who was a violator of human rights when I was young. He was the mayor of Caracas. And the governor of Caracas, Antonio Ledesma. The repression happened every day. They killed students every week. Our old people, they were repressed. And this man was here today. And you know what happened? The ambassador of the government of the United States at the United Nations went to this demonstration. He took, megaphone, and he spoke by the megaphone, and he told these people, you have to be persistent, the USA is going to help you, President Trump is going to help you, we have to make Maduro go away. When have you seen in the history of diplomacy, in the United Nations, where tolerance has to be the rule, that something can that may happen? No, it's like if our ambassador here, Samuel, went to a demonstration against the President of the United States, and he took a megaphone and he said, we have to overthrow Trump, he needs to be impeached, and whatever. He cannot do that. Maybe he wants to, no? I don't know. But it's not allowed by the international law and by the Venezuelan law to do that. No? So these people are crazy. It is your struggle, the American people, but I must say it's also of the world, because this man is so unpredictable. No? But I don't know what's worse, really. No? So it's not a matter of changing the man with orange hair for the woman of yellow hair or whatever. No? It's not a matter of changing. The system, yes. And not only the system in the USA, it's capitalism. Yes. And I must close, as Comandante Chavez said that day, it was the 25th of January in Brazil, in Porto Alegre. He said the only way to overcome capitalism, to put an end to capitalism. I am convinced that there is only one way, and it is socialism. Thank you very much. There's a new one that says, alerta, alerta, alerta que caminan Chávez y Bolívar por América Latina.